The best fantasy players are playing chess, not checkers. And let's be real, the championship team you finish with is never the exact team that you draft on draft day. If you're like me, you're constantly hustling, trading, and improving your roster throughout the season. That's why in this video, we're going to be pinpointing players with the absolute easiest early season schedules, guys who are set to boom right out of the gate. Draft them, rack up some wins, and then trade them after their hot start to go get that elite talent should you choose to do so, right? But guys who are guaranteed to give you wins, and then you can trade them away for better talent if you want. We'll be using DraftShark's strength of schedule tool today, and this tool calculates how much easier or harder a defense is for a specific player's position by looking at how many fantasy points they typically allow versus what those same players scored against other teams. All right, so we're editing the video now and realizing maybe that was a bit confusing. So to make it as simple as possible, to put it in layman's term, the bigger plus there is on a matchup. So if a matchup is plus 20%, that's an incredible matchup. You want to go after those ones. But if a matchup is negative 20%, the bigger the negative, the worse the matchup. The bigger the plus, the better the matchup. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's get back to the video. So starting off with James Conner and Trey Benson, the Arizona backfield. No running back room in the entire NFL has an easier schedule to start the season. On average, over those first 3 games, Arizona running backs faced defenses that last year allowed plus 20.8% more fantasy points than a running back's typical output. For Conner, it's an easy case to make. I mean, let's be honest. He's coming off a year where he was averaging just under 16 PPR points per game on great efficiency, by the way, at 4.6 yards per carry, high volume guy, great efficiency, explosive player. In 2024, out of 46 running backs with 100 attempts, he ranked 6th in PFF grade, 13th in yards per carry and yards to contact per attempt, top 5 in missed tackles forced. He was 4th in runs of 10 or more yards. By the way, the same as Bijan Robinson. He had more 10-plus yard runs than Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, James Cook, and Devon Achane, and he was 6th in yards per route run. He was great in the air and on the ground. And then after this incredibly successful season, the team signed him to a 2-year extension. He is aging like fine wine. And even as a Trey Benson stan, I can recognize if Conner keeps performing the way he did last year, the Cardinals will be foolish not to give him the rock. Now, for Trey Benson, you get a shot at this backfield and a potential year 2 breakout, but you get to do that 77 picks later than James Conner. That is the sell on him. And we saw an incredibly promising stretch in his rookie year. From week 3 onwards, out of 70 running backs with at least 40 rushing attempts in that span, he ranked 5th in yards per attempt, 6th in yards after contact per attempt, 7th in elusive rating, and 24th in yards per route run. In that span, he was averaging more fantasy points per touch than J.K. Dobbins, Najee, Brian Robinson, DeAndre Swift, Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard, CMC, and Jonathan Taylor. And again, it wasn't really so much that Trey Benson was bad. That's just not true. That's false. He just didn't have the opportunity. So you're getting it at a cheaper price point in a great backfield. All right, at ADP though, I mean, I think both are worth targeting. Okay, let's talk Alvin Kamara. The Saints have some real cupcake matchups to start the year. The Cardinals, Niners, Bills, and Giants were all incredible matchups in 2024. And a video like this, we do have to recognize that teams do change from one year to the next. So it's not a perfect science, but you're trying to find that little edge. The edges is typically where your fantasy championships are won, right? And those were great matchups last year. On average, in those 4 games specifically, Saints running backs, they faced defenses that last year allowed plus 11.8% more fantasy points than a running back's typical output. And if you've been on this channel this year, then you probably already know that we love Kamara's ADP. RB20 off the board in 2025 drafts, going in rounds 4 or 5, depending on the format. RB20, his ADP this year, would be Alvin's lowest point per game finish ever in his 7-year career. In fact, he's finished top 8 in points per game in 7 out of his last 8 career seasons. He was an RB3 in 2023 in points per game. He was an RB5 last year in points per game, and he averaged more points per game last year than Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, Breece Hall, Bucky Irving, but he's being drafted significantly behind all of those names. Most of those names, I mean, I don't get it. And there's not a single running back in this backfield that should scare you either, as far as like hurting his early season success, your ability to sell high on him if you're worried about him breaking down towards the end of the year with his age. All right, how about Chuba Hubbard? The Panthers have 3 matchups that I'm obsessed with to start the year. The Jaguars in week 1, the Cardinals in week 2, and the Patriots in week number 4. On average, in those 3 games specifically, the Panthers running backs faced defenses that last year allowed plus 14.2% more fantasy points than a running back's typical output. And don't forget, guys, it's not just about the matchups. I mean, Chuba was a damn good running back in 2024. He was the one bright spot in that offense. 16.1 fantasy points per game. He had 300 plus touches, and he averaged 4.8 yards per attempt. He had the 5th highest yards per attempt amongst running backs with 250 carries. All right, I mean, you look at that list. You got the Derrick Henrys, the Gibbs, the Barkleys, the Cooks of the world. And of course, he wasn't in the 5s or the 6 like those guys, but he's the only running back that was efficient on high volume touches that was on a terrible offense. I mean, he shined in an awful situation around him. The Panthers last year, they were 23rd in points per game scoring. They were 29th in total yards per game, 29th in passing yards per game, and 21st in red zone attempts per game. I mean, what happens if this team takes the slightest step forward offensively? What could Chuba's true ceiling be if they go from last in the league in some of these categories to middle of the pack? I mean, and then this team, after a great year, signs him to a long-term contract, giving him a 4-year deal. I mean, I don't think people are giving Chuba the respect that he deserved after a great season last year. All right, let's talk about some wide receivers here. All right, starting off with Mr. Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. Guys, I'll be honest with you, these 2 names, Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, they embody this entire video. The idea of hitting on players who are going to start out of the gates really hot and then trading them in some sort of 2-for-1, 1-for-1 situation, or trading for an injured player that's going to be great when they come back. They embody this entire idea of taking advantage of the moment, these little edges of the early season schedule. And that's because they have a great schedule to start the year. 3 matchups we love. The Ravens in week 2, the Lions in week 4, and the Vikings in week 5. On average in those 3 games, the Browns wide receivers faced the defenses that last year allowed plus 10.6% more fantasy points than the wide receivers' typical output last year. And someone please tell me which of these matchups, by the way, the Browns are likely to be up and not needing to throw the ball every single down. I mean, guys, again, let's look at these matchups for the Browns. Bengals with Joe Burrow. All right. The Ravens with Lamar Jackson, the Packers and all that they have, the insane Lions offense and the insane Vikings offense. Please tell me one of those games where they're not going to be needing to throw the ball all 4 quarters. We're talking garbage time beauty to start the season. And Judy's an easy bet in my opinion. I mean, no one joined this team to threaten his targets. He's still the number 1 guy. He could have a similar role in 2025 to start the year that he had in 2024. He had a higher utilization rate from week 9 onwards last year than the Justin Jeffersons, Amon-Ra's, Terry McLaurin. And of course, they had a quarterback in Jameis Winston who was just, funneling targets. And, he dominated Jerry Jeudy from week 9 onwards in that role. He was 4th in targets per game, 5th in receptions, 3rd in receiving yards, 7th in fantasy points per game at 19.2, and wide receiver 6 in that span. And again, this is the perfect early season dump because I'm very confident, you might not be, but I'm very confident that Joe Flacco will start the year as this team starter. And then you can trade him after all these great matchups, both game script and matchup strength of schedule, before you even have to think about the rest of that quarterback room. Trade him after week 3. You don't have to think about the idea of a Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel. You don't have to think about that because he's going to start the season off strong. He's going to be a great trade target. All right. Draft with me every night this offseason on the FastDraft app, where there are over $250,000 in prizes waiting to be won. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That is 10 free drafts on us. And when you finish your first real money contest, I'll send you my 2025 rookie report and season rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today. Let's talk Bears wide receivers, Rome Odunze and DJ Moore, a situation where you don't have to worry about quarterbacks. I love Rome Odunze's ADP on most of these sites. He's a year 2 guy who could break out, but he's not unreasonably priced. I do think DJ Moore is a little too expensive at wide receiver 21. But honestly, I love every matchup that the Bears have to start their season. They have that weird bye week in week number 5, the early bye week, which none of us really love. But some are just great matchups, but more importantly, they're all against teams that could lead to shootouts, right? Like Minnesota, Detroit, Cowboys, those are all plus matchups for your wide receivers. But even you look at the Las Vegas Raiders, I could see all of these matchups kind of leading to shootouts for these teams where the offenses really need to be shining in the 4th quarter. But ultimately, the case for Odunze, you are betting on the talent. There have been 8 wide receivers drafted top 10 in the NFL draft since 2020, if we don't include this year's draft. I mean, if you look at that list, Odunze would be an outlier if he did not hit this year. You're also making a bet on Ben Johnson's ability to turn the offense around in Chicago, which is what he did for Detroit. No one was talking about Detroit's offense before Ben Johnson rocked up. Let's be real for a second. God damn. But in his first 3 years, he was their play caller in Detroit. They were top 3 in passing yards per game in each of the last 2 seasons and top 8 in every single year he was their offensive coordinator. And while you are betting on Ben Johnson, you're also getting in this wide receiver room in Chicago 18 plus picks cheaper than you would have to by drafting DJ Moore. And for both Odunze and DJ Moore, if you want to go the DJ Moore route, well, the good news is, even though it's a crowded room, we've consistently seen multiple pass catchers thrive in Ben Johnson's offense. In 2023, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta finished top 4 at their positions on a points per game basis. In 2024, both Amon-Ra, Jameson, and Laporta all thrived. Laporta had a little bit of a down season, granted, but my preference is to go the Odunze route, cheaper entry price, no threat to his work as an outside kind of, X receiver, and the potential for a year 2 breakout. All right, let's go to the tight end spot here, and let's talk Brenton Strange. You ready to get a little weird here with Brenton Strange? I know, this is my favorite late round tight end. If you're not going to go Bowers, McBride, Kittle, I would rather punt the position entirely and ideally take Strange as my last pick. But the Jags have 3 matchups I love in the first 5 weeks. We're talking the Panthers in week 1, the Bengals in week 2, and the Chiefs in week 5. And if you look on average in those 3 games specifically that I just mentioned, 3 out of the 5 games he'll start the season with, Jags tight ends, they'll face defenses that last year allowed plus 21% more fantasy points than a tight end's typical output. I mean, matchups that are just smashes across the board. And we've talked about Brenton Strange, on the channel before, sneaky guy, late round breakout potentially, but he's already shown flashes. If you look at his last 2 seasons in the NFL, and keep in mind, tight ends typically start slow. This is a very good prospect here with Brenton Strange. But in the last 2 years, starting off slow without Evan Ingram in the lineup, he almost averaged 9 points per game anyway, so he's a fringe starter in that scenario. And now there's a bigger pie in the Jags offense up for grabs. I know they brought in Travis Hunter. I know they brought in De'Ami Brown, but they also let go of Evan Ingram, crucial where those tight end targets are going to be going, right? And Christian Kirk, who's in Houston. Ingram was second on the team in targets. He only played 9 games last year, right? He averaged 7.1 targets per game. Kirk was 6th on the team in targets. He only played 8 games, averaging 6 targets per game. And we saw big games last year for K. Dotton in Liam Cohen's offense. So don't sleep on Brenton Strange. He could be a bigger part of the offense than most of us anticipate, and it might happen from day 1. Okay, how about Jalen Hurts? Jalen Hurts, I'll be honest, he's not a guy that you're going to sell an upgrade from, but if it brings you any solace, if you do draft him, I know we don't all like going quarterback early. He is the safest pick that you can make, and the upside is clearly there, and he's going to get some wins for you earlier in the season. The Eagles have a couple smash matchups to start the year. Week 1 versus the Cowboys, the Bucks in week 4. I really like their schedule overall. On average, in the first 5 games, Hurts faces defense that last year allowed plus 7.1% more fantasy points than a quarterback's typical output. And I know Jalen Hurts, again, you got to draft him, round 4, maybe round 5, if you're lucky. It's a high draft pick, but it's a safe draft pick. We're talking about 4 straight years where he has averaged over 21 points per game. 4 straight years, including 2 seasons where he finished as the quarterback 1 and quarterback 2 on a points per game basis. I mean, the big concern around Jalen Hurts this offseason was if the tush push was going to be banned, right? There was motion in the ocean, if you will, but there wasn't enough votes to go through to actually ban the tush push, which is the most unstoppable play in all of football right now. It will still be a major cheat code in 2025 for the Eagles, and thank God, because it would have been a huge loss for Jalen Hurts' fantasy upside. I mean, the guy has 10 plus rushing touchdowns in each of his last 4 seasons, but this man should literally fall. Literally, he should fall into 10 rushing touchdowns. You get it? Because that's the way the tush push works. He falls. Yeah, I know he uses his thighs, all right? But he should fall into 10 rushing touchdowns this year at minimum. He's an easy pick to make. He has a good start of the year. And if you want to trade him early on, you can. If you want to go for the Josh Allens after that. But he's going to have a great season regardless. Here are some honorable mentions. Guys that I could have brought to the video, but I didn't want to talk about them, or they were too obvious. So like CJ Stroud, didn't really want to tell you to draft CJ Stroud, but running backs are a little bit too obvious, but have great early season schedules. Your Achans, your CMCs, wide receiver that felt too obvious, like T Higgins and Drake London. Zay Flowers, I don't really ever say anything positive about him, so we're not going to start now, are we? Outside of we love him as a player, right? We're talking specifically fantasy football. And then TJ Hawkinson felt a little too obvious as well. But unfortunately, this video, it doesn't really apply to best ball tourneys. So if you're watching this, it's not really best ball specific because, you know, you're not managing your best ball leagues. You draft your players. There's no trades. But in best ball, it's all about hitting, you know, the ceiling with every single pick. So it's kind of the opposite of a video like this. And I am personally drafting in best ball tournaments over on the FastDraft app. They just released the Rabbit tournament this month. 15 rounds, start 8, 1 quarterback format. Guys, it's already 63% full, and it just released like 16 days ago. $50,000 prize pool, no rake, 20-second clock. Here's an example of, you know, kind of doing the opposite of this video where I'm kind of swinging for the fences with like the Achans, the Hamptons, the T-Max, trying to hit on some of those rookie breakouts. I love this team that I put together. And the thing is, if you're out there and you love drafting in fantasy football, that's probably why you're watching this video. You don't have to wait until late August to do fantasy drafts. I know, like maybe you're in some home leagues. You're like, damn, I can't wait to draft. Me too, but I'm still drafting right now. I don't have the patience you have. I gotta be in some drafts and having some fun. So the earlier you draft in these this Rabbit tournament, the better the ADP is to exploit. I would love for you to come draft with me. Download the app. Use my promo code LAND, LAND, FastDraft app, promo code LAND. We'll match your deposit up to $50. And then you get my rankings for free. All right. My 2025 cheat sheet for free will be sent to you, as well as my 2025 rookie report. But I do appreciate you guys for being here with me on the video. If you found some value in it, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and check out the other content on the channel. But that is it for today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you very soon. Nothing but love. If you're thinking about supporting us in this economy, that's big love, and you deserve love in return. So for every yearly Mother Flocker member who uses the promo code LAND, we're giving out a free team playbook, our 2025 rookie report, access to all premium tools, free site vouchers, and of course, a huge thank you from the LAND crew. You're far too kind. That's love.